What in God's name was the Fed and some of your other agencies thinking when you allowed banks to debank customers for reputational risk?
Welcome back to Freedom Forge, the channel where we cut through the noise, speak truth to power, and defend American values every single day. If you're tired of media spin, if you want straight talk from a patriotic, common-sense perspective, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update from Freedom Forge. Today, we're diving into one of the most revealing Senate hearings in recent memory. One that gets right to the heart of whether Washington's so-called experts respect your freedom or want to selectively control who does and doesn't get access to basic American rights.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that courtesy. Madam Vice Chair. Credit should be given when it is due. I remember, 3 or 4 years ago, Chairman Powell and others were giving a report on the economy. Inflation was 9%. Was gutting the American people like a fish. Stevie Wonder could have seen it coming. President Biden asked, and Congress consented, I didn't, that we start spending money like it had the value of Louisiana ditch water. Had President Biden, had we discovered life on Mars when President Biden was president, he would have sent it money, medium. And I remember the Federal Reserve represented by Chairman Powell sitting here, and we're talking about what to do about it. And he explained his plans, and in so many words, I said, not going to work. I've read the white papers. You can get inflation down, but we're going to have to suffer unemployment of 7, 8, 9%. It didn't happen, did it? We had a soft landing. And the Federal Reserve was in part responsible, in the best sense of the word, for that. And we don't applaud that enough. And we can debate whether the chairman and the vice chairman and others should raise or lower interest rates, and what we should do about quantitative easing and how many economists can dance on the head of the pin. But it's a fact. We had a soft landing. Thank God for it. Now, inflation is not down where we want, but 2.7% is a hell of a lot better than 9%, without having to suffer 7, 8, 9, 10% unemployment and the human misery that goes with it. So the Fed did something right. On the other hand, what in God's name was the Fed and some of your other agencies thinking when you allowed banks to debank customers for reputational risk? Are you kidding me? Why did you allow that to happen? Because you didn't like their politics. Or you didn't like the products they made. I mean, do you think it would be fair? Senator Warren's not here, so I hesitate to talk about it. Senator Warren was a distinguished professor at Harvard University. Some people don't like Harvard. Some people don't like their politics. How could you possibly allow a bank to have the option? I'm not saying they did it, But to debank someone like Senator Warren, I'm using her as a hypothetical example, because you didn't like her politics. And you can say the same thing about gun manufacturers and oil and gas and anybody you don't like, and you let the banks do it. What in God's name were y'all thinking, Madam Vice Chair?
Well, Senator, I appreciate your concerns, and I share them. I was not the vice chair at the time
I know that.
decisions were made.
But your institution went along with it. The banks proposed it, and your institution sucked it up like a Hoover Deluxe.
In my view, debanking is never an appropriate activity. It is, every American in this country should have access to financial services, and they should not be limited from access to those services based on their political, religious beliefs, or their engagement in a particular business that may be disfavored but is legally
Let me tell you, folks, this isn't over yet. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's get right into what this hearing was about. The Senate was questioning members of the Federal Reserve and other enforcement agencies about two major issues. First, the historic inflation that's been ravaging our country, and second, just as important, the deeply troubling practice of what's called deep banking. That's when financial institutions essentially blacklist American citizens, businesses, or entire industries based on nothing more than reputational risk, which, let's be honest, is a fancy bureaucratic term for we don't like your politics or what you do. This is not just a theoretical problem. It's about whether conservatives, gun manufacturers, oil and gas workers, or anyone outside the progressive, woke mainstream gets access to the financial system we all pay for and rely on. Now, let me break down what Senator John Kennedy said and why it matters. You heard Kennedy actually give credit to the Federal Reserve for not tanking the U.S. economy with 9% inflation. Remember, this was during the period when Biden and Pelosi were acting like money grows on trees, spending trillions, printing cash, and pretending there wouldn't be consequences. Kennedy called it like it is. He said Stevie Wonder could have seen it coming when inflation started gutting American families. That's the kind of plain talk we need more of. Our leadership didn't just miss the warning signs, they willfully ignored them. Kennedy's point is essential. In Washington, nobody ever takes responsibility. The damage from inflation is not just a percentage point on a chart. It's families skipping meals, working 2 jobs, and watching their life savings disappear, all because of reckless economic experiments. The left keeps telling us we need more government spending, more regulation, more expert intervention. But who actually suffers? Real people, especially the working class. But here's what really sets this hearing apart. Kennedy made sure not to let the Federal Reserve off the hook just because they managed, this time, to pull off a so-called soft landing. He brought the fire to the question of debanking. And folks, if you haven't been tracking this issue, you need to start now, because this is something every American, regardless of party, should be afraid of. Ask yourself, what gives a big bank or a bureaucrat at the Fed the authority to decide that your business, your beliefs, your job aren't reputable enough for a checking account or a loan? Kennedy laid it out crystal clear. He asked why the Fed and other agencies allowed banks to start booting people from the financial system based purely on political disagreement or the products they make. Think about that. Today, it's a gun manufacturer or a conservative media outlet. Tomorrow, it could be you just for supporting the wrong candidate, attending the wrong protest, or refusing to bow to ideological pressure. Let's stop pretending that reputational risk is about fighting crime or protecting consumers. It's about punishing dissent, plain and simple. We've seen it with PayPal shutting down conservative accounts, with banks refusing to serve oil companies, with platforms deleting people just for holding opinions outside the mainstream leftist narrative. This is not accountability. This is un-American. What do we get from the Fed's vice chair in response? A whole bunch of classic Washington buck passing. I wasn't vice chair at the time those decisions were made. The banks proposed it, and our institution went along with it. Well, isn't that just dandy? Meanwhile, rights are being chipped away, and nobody in power wants to take responsibility or fix it. Where's the accountability? Where's the outrage from the so-called defenders of civil liberties? It's nowhere to be found because, to them, This is about politics, not principles. Let's be very clear about something. Access to basic financial services is not a privilege handed down by bureaucrats. It's a fundamental necessity of life in a modern, free society. If you can cut off the flow of money, you can cut off the flow of freedom. You can control what businesses survive, what voices get heard, even what churches can pay their bills. That's the real, terrifying power at the heart of this issue. And that's what the left is quietly hoping nobody will notice until it's too late. As conservatives, we believe in equal treatment under the law. We believe in the First Amendment, not just in word but in spirit. Every American, from the blue-collar oil worker in Louisiana to the independent journalist in Texas to the gun manufacturer and the farmer, deserves access to participate in the American economy unless they break the law. Period. If you don't defend that principle now, you won't have a voice when the regulators come for you later. Kennedy knows it, and he's one of the few in D.C. telling the truth. Now, if you want to fight back against this growing authoritarianism, you can start by getting informed and getting loud. Call your representatives. Demand guarantees that the government and the banks will not discriminate against Americans for their political views, their work, or their beliefs. This is an issue that should unite real patriots everywhere, left, right, and center. If you love freedom, if you love America, you should be very afraid of unelected officials and woke bankers deciding who gets to participate in society. Thanks for watching. If you agree that it's time to hold Washington and Wall Street accountable, if you think every American deserves access to the financial system regardless of what they believe, then you belong here at Freedom Forge. Make your voice heard by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing this message with your friends, your family, and on your social media. We will keep shining the light. We will keep holding the line. And as long as you keep watching and speaking up, freedom will not be silenced. Stay strong, stay informed, and remember, freedom is forged in the fire of truth. See you next time.